All right, guys, we are in for a discussion today. I have multiple questions in several areas that we're going to be covering, kind of as a group thing, because all of them are good subjects, but I don't think well, they kind of all work together. So let's get started. We'll skip most of this preamble and move right along. The first question is I've put a lot of videos up about how to design, how to get started, how to pick out car audio equipment, what to buy first, so forth and so on. But inevitably, the question keeps coming up. So, introduce Cat. Mr. Pumpkin, sir. Okay, so anyway, yes, there is a cat in the video, and he is Pumpkin. I call him Punk for obvious reasons. Um, so, the first thing we're going to cover is you've got your new car, and you need to sort out what you're doing, right? If it's a brand new car or it's an older car, but it's new to you. So you need to sort out how you're going to proceed forward. All right, the first question you need to ask is the head unit, the current existing radio, capable of doing all the things I want my stereo to be able to do? Do you want Bluetooth? Does it have Bluetooth? Does it have a higher level of Bluetooth? Because now Bluetooth isn't enough. You might be requiring Bluetooth 5.0 or 4.0. It may just have the original Bluetooth, which will work, but it's slight degradation in the audio. Blah blah blah. Does it have Apple CarPlay? Do you want Apple CarPlay? Does it have Android Auto? Do you want Android? Does it have navigation? Does it have a screen? Does it have the stuff that you want? Okay, that's the first question you need to ask. And let's say that it does not. Okay, so then the second question is it replaceable? Within the realm of something not ridiculous. If it's something that's like a 2014 or 13 or older, most likely fairly easy to replace with a few minor parts to make things work together. If it's a 18, 19 or newer, there's a good chance it's going to be quite difficult to replace. It can still be replaced, but it may require vehicle-specific modules and components to tie into the existing systems. For example, on a lot of the newer vehicles, the door ding-dong, the seatbelt ding-dong are tied into the stereo system. In some cases, the piped-in fake engine noises are tied into the system. In some cases, air conditioner controls and windows and settings and even some of the engine management stuff, and all that's tied into your system. Pretty much all of that can be tied into a new aftermarket system. However, it will be exponentially more expensive as you go. In some cases, it may not even have an ability to do an aftermarket radio. So in that case, though, positive note, you've probably got all the stuff that you're looking for in a stereo anyway. So there's a positive. Usually if it's so tied into your vehicle it's hard to replace, it's got the bells and whistles you're looking for. So there you go. Now, once you've asked yourself those questions and got those answers, if you're dealing with a stereo system that you're going to keep, right? So it's a newer one or it does what you think it should do. Now you're going to keep that stereo system, but you still really want to replace everything else. Fair. The first thing you need to do is get a DSP. You can get a DSP in an amplifier. as long as it has enough channels to cover your whole system. You can buy one separately. Uh, you can get one in a stereo, but I don't really recommend it because every single stereo that I've seen that comes with a reasonably good DSP has been crazy expensive and hasn't had the best settings available in the DSP. Sometimes the crossovers will be funky. Like you may have a crossover on two channels that can be crossed over at say 4,000, and then have a 24 dB roll off, and then your next one for the other two channels may only come down to say may come down to 3,500 or 2,500. There's no meeting in the middle kind of a situation. These crossover points in the stereo are designed for each individual position in the car, not for a position with two different drivers in it. For example, the crossover may be designed for a 4-door application, not a 2-door with two different speakers in each door application. Can you sort of use it for that? Yes, but again, you'll run into those weird problems. Having your own crossover is going to change that. Having your own DSP is going to make that all better. So getting a digital signal processor in something is pretty much crucial to having anything that's worth listening to in the end. The other downside to the factory system is it usually has a weird, funky tune. It may have two channels that come out that have a scoop somewhere, or have a bass roll off, or have the highs rolled up. And then the other two channels may just be some highs. And then the other two channels will do that. And then they may also have channels that are flipped on either side. So you have a positive negative on this side and negative positive over here. These are all, it's like they take a DSP, right? They take all the driver locations and take a DSP, and they DSP the whole thing, and then they design the stereo system to output signals based on a specific DSP tune they come up with. And that works for a stamp it and roll situation, but whenever you go to replace the stuff, everything's going to be wonky. So in that situation where you've got all these wonky signals that are designed for specific speakers and specific locations, and you're replacing all that stuff, your friend at that point is going to be your digital signal processor, because it allows you to clean all that mess up. It allows you to, most all of them allow you to use high level in or line level in. High level in is where you have speaker wires coming that are going to go to a speaker, but you take those and run them into your DSP to get your signal. Low level in is where you have outputs like these on the back of your stereo, and you plug in RCAs and run those to your DSP. This is my stand-in for a DSP, even though it's not a DSP. But most of your good DSPs are going to have both those options, which means you can run those crappy signals that you've got coming out of those speaker wires. You got a left and a right, and they're all messed up. You can run them into that DSP, and then you can run more speaker wires in there, and then you can take and sum those signals to get a good, clean 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz signal, relatively flat. That gives you a jumping off point to do the rest of the system. The DSP can do that. It does the line output converter trick. It does the EQ trick. It does a line level boost, so it can give you more of a hotter signal. If your stereo that you've got produces like 1 volt, it'll crank that sucker up to 3 or 4 volts, give you enough power going to your amplifiers where the signal stays good and solid and clean. A DSP is the magic carpet. It is the key to making everything else work properly, no matter which direction you go. Whether you use an aftermarket radio, which DSP gives you super flexible tuning, or a factory radio where the DSP gives you super flexible tuning, but also gives you the ability to integrate into an existing factory system. So once you decided which way you're going, the next direction is always going to be get a DSP, either in an amplifier or not. If you get it in an amplifier, just remember that if you decide to upgrade or make more power in another amplifier later on, you're going to have to get another amplifier with a DSP, or you're going to have to buy a DSP because you're replacing the unit that's doing that. You could also use most DSP amplifiers can also just function as a DSP. So you can come right out of that as a signal, process signal, and not use the amplifier functions at all. Or you may want to upgrade at some point, add door speakers, add some tweeters, and some other things. And you go, I don't have enough channels, so you buy a second amplifier. That DSP could often give you a few more channels than what it's capable of amplifying. So you can use some of its channels to run, say, your tweeters and whatnot, and then use the channels on the new amplifier to run the bigger speakers. There are multiple options, but ultimately, the best choice, if you can afford to do so, is to buy a standalone digital signal processor, because that's going to give you the most flexibility, take up the least amount of space, and be the most budget-friendly way to upgrade and also move all this equipment to different vehicles in the future. Having a standalone unit is more flexible. Now, if you know 100% for sure that you're not going to be changing this system once you put it in, and this is exactly how much power you're ever going to need, go ahead, get an integrated DSP, get an integrated amp DSP combo, especially if you can get one really cheap. As long as that DSP and that amp will handle and do all the tricks, it's going to be fair. It's going to be a fine deal. So now we have our DSP. One of the questions that I get asked quite a bit is stuff like mixing ohm loads. Can you mix a 2 ohm driver with a 4 ohm driver? Can you use pro audio gear mixed with normal car audio gear? Both the answers to both those questions is absolutely yes. Can you use a 6.5 inch little subwoofer where you would normally use something like this Audio Dynamics coaxial or this little Hyanka coaxial? Yes. Just understand there's trade-offs with that. It's not going to play that 1 and 2 kilohertz like these will. It'll still play some good low end as long as you've got a 3-inch and maybe a tweeter to go along with it. It'd be a good solution in that particular scenario. There's always trade-offs. Could you put a 6.5 inch pro audio driver in the same location where this would normally go? Absolutely. But you're going to have a tweeter somewhere. Just keep that in mind. If the pro audio driver comes with a tweeter, that's fine. But also understand, unless that tweeter and that pro audio driver can be separated and driven by 2 different sources, you're probably going to have a pretty bright tweeter that you're not going to really be able to turn down. Okay. In most cases, a lot of equipment today has something that looks like this. And what's happening here is your hook up here for your main driver. Then there's a capacitor and a wire coming from it. And that wire goes up to this magnet and goes in a hole. And that's what's driving this tweeter right here. So if you wanted to bi-amp this speaker or use 2 different signals, you can connect right here and drive your tweeter with one set of speaker wires and drive your woofer with another, which enables you to essentially work this the same way you would a set of components, except the tweeter is located in a really good spot, whereas with components, it would be compromised at least off to the side. So all of these things are relevant. As long as you've got good, flexible tools, even this Hyanka, this cheap Hyanka, same way. It has the wires running up through there, running in there for you can pull that right out and use your tweeter there. So you connect this cheap Amazon Hyanka speaker, you could bi-amp this and get full control over this. This is the woofer and the tweeter. So what you use in your doors depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you're lacking bass in your car and you don't have anywhere to put a subwoofer, you might consider something like this, right? It could do that job. But if you try to reproduce a lot of bass in your front doors, you're definitely going to have to sound deaden them a lot. And I mean a lot, a lot. There don't need to be any material inside that cavity that is not sound dead. Everything needs to be covered. And you're probably going to be doing a lot more than just that. So it's a pretty big project. If you are wanting to go with something in that situation, or you want to go a different direction, consider a set of these. CustomSpeakerPods.com. I have the pod that I destroyed with a crowbar, and it took me a while, but it's still in pretty good shape considering I busted it in a couple of places. It would still work. Got a split right there, but you can't even hardly move that material, even though it's busted. It's just so hard. This material is very resilient. But if you go to CustomSpeakerPods.com and link down below, use my code down there for 10% off, by the way. Save yourself 10% right at the purchase gate. Go down there and look. They may have some of these for your car. If they do, this can enable you to not only potentially run a woofer up there, but also to run multiples of something like this. So you get twice the cone area. Cone area makes bass. So there's options out there. Understanding what you're doing and how you're doing it, that's the important thing. But again, no matter what you're doing, you're going to be using a DSP. The DSP is the key that makes everything else work. It fixes all the problems. It sorts out all the issues. Amps are cheap. You can pick them up anywhere. If you've got enough channels of amplifiers and you got yourself a DSP with enough channels, you can do anything from hardcore sound quality to full on, 50,000 watt, SPL systems. The same DSP will work in both of those situations. You can't go wrong with it. So if you wanted to run something like that, say you wanted to run two 8-ohm drivers, you could run them as a 4-ohm, hook them together. And now you've got a 4-ohm driver. If you run them in parallel, if you've got, ohm load doesn't matter. It matters to the amplifier. If the amplifier can handle usually a limited amount of low ohm load, but ultimately it's not going to matter in your overall build. It's just a matter of getting inside the amplifier's power range. You want an ohm load that will work within that amplifier, that specific amplifier's power range. So it may be like from my JL 450/4s are designed to work with 1.5 ohms to 4 ohms and give me the same amount of power from those 2 ohms. Most amplifiers today do not do that. They'll work from, say, 1 ohm to 4 ohms, but as you cut the ohms in half and lower them, the power is going to go up. And, that's fine. Just understand that it's going to be louder. Now, what if you've got a 5,000 watt sub amp and you've got a 300 watt front channel amp and you don't have a DSP? Now you're having to turn that sucker down in the back and try to get those adjustments back as you're balancing a giant adult person with a little tiny baby person. There's so much you're trying to tweak the crap out of it. If you got a DSP set up, it enables you to fix all those problems. You can bring all those frequencies into check and get a good balance in that system. Even if you chaotically put it way out of whack, a DSP can help solve those issues. For those of you that are familiar with modern car hot rodding, the number one tool, you ask any modern mechanic, what's your most important tool in the shop? They're going to tell you it's this laptop, because they can plug into the computer and they can tune the car. They can change shift points. They can change fuel ratio, air to fuel ratios. They can change all kinds of stuff. They can take a factory engine and transmission combination and get more power out of it, get better throttle response, get better shift points, all that stuff without ever turning a wrench one single time. And even when they start to add parts and fix things, they still need to go back in there and change settings to work with all that stuff they're adding. That's exactly what a DSP does for car audio. It opens doors for everything. Okay. So, and I know, like I said, this is a long format video and I'm covering a lot of ground, but I'm trying to answer a lot of questions and bring a lot of new concepts into your brain so you'll understand the importance of different things. Let's see. So, and these things sound good, by the way, guys. If you haven't been to harmonyaudio.com and you're trying to build some good SQ without spending a whole lot of money, these are some really good sounding little drivers. They do well. They have a lot of them. They have some really good speakers there, and I'm impressed with their build quality. So I want to get some more. I want to get some of the subs in. I've heard good things about them from people that I trust. I've heard good things about the subs and the rest of their speaker line. I haven't put my hands on them yet, so I can't speak on it 100%. But I want to get my hands on a set of on one of their subs, maybe one of their loaded enclosures, and on one of their amplifiers, so I can do some testing. But yeah. So the key thing is start out by figuring out your head unit, get it sorted, buy a DSP. And you want a DSP, I would say you go ahead and figure out how many channels you're going to need. And then buy a DSP that has maybe 2 more channels than you could possibly need. Like if you go through and you say, I want to have components in the front, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 2-way components. Say I want coaxials in the rear, that's 5 and 6. And then I want subwoofer, that's 7, okay? And so you say, okay, I need a 7 channel. Well, they don't make those. So I need an 8 channel, right? And that would work. Buy a 10 channel or a 12 channel. The reason is because you're going to come to a point where you want to add a 3-way set in the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You still want to want your doors, 7 and 8. Then your subwoofer's 9. See, now you done went past your 8. Now you're at 10. Okay? And then you're going to probably come to a point where you want to add a sub in the front. Well, that's another channel. And then maybe you want to put components in the back instead of coaxials. You know, now you're up to 12. So when you start out, buy a 10 or a 12 channel. I would not buy, knowing what I know now, okay, I own a 6 channel. I would never buy, again, a 6 channel DSP. I would not dare go lower than 8 channels, not even remotely. 8 channels is my minimum. And no matter what I think I'm going to need, I want at least 8 outputs. So, and I'm going to be looking for 10 and 12 because more channels is better. If you're into SQ, you're doing this on a regular, and you get caught up in this. If you're made it this far into the video at this point, you definitely don't want a 6-channel DSP because you are a hardcore car audio person. If you've made it this far into the video, you are that person. You need to at least get a 10-channel, preferably a 12-channel DSP. Because if not, you are going to eventually want that. You're going to eventually want it, and you're going to be like, man, I should have got it. And here's the thing. Having extra channels, it doesn't hurt you a bit whenever you're running a 6-channel system or a 4-channel or a 3-channel system. Having all them channels is not going to hurt anything. But whenever you need 2 more channels and you don't have them, man, it's like you just run out of rooms in your house, you know. There's no room for nobody else to have their own room. You're just going to have to share. Same scenario. Start out with more rooms than you think you're ever going to need. There's at least one of these analogies that I made that's going to register with some people. So hopefully y'all can wrap your heads around that. That's all I'm going to cover today, guys. I just wanted to get some stuff out there and talk about it. Well, I'll take that back. There is one more area that I'm going to talk about today, and that's crossover points. I'm going to brush over them kind of slightly. Crossover points. I'm going to probably make a video about this, but essentially when you're picking out your equipment, make sure that you look at the frequency response range on the equipment. See what frequency response it has from, say, 60 hertz to, say, 5 kilohertz. And your tweeters may come down to 3 kilohertz. And your subwoofer may play up to 90 kilohertz. You need to make sure that all of those ranges overlap each other. The more the better, actually. Because later on, that flexibility is going to make things nice. So you may be asking your woofer to play from 50 hertz to 100 hertz. And you may be having this guy crossed over at 100 hertz to 20 kilohertz, which will work fine for these two sets. They would do this, right? But you're going to be missing some mid-woofer response because this guy is going to be doing duty as your vocal range plus your drums and all that. And this guy is not going to be able to handle that sub frequency very well and be able to handle those high notes. So you may want to put something in the middle at some point. Or you may want to replace this with this. Well, this isn't going to handle those drums very well. It'll handle, 300 hertz, 350 hertz up, but it's not going to handle that, 100 hertz and 150 and 200 hertz. So you may have it connected like that for now. You may have this guy doing this and this guy connected and going up. But at some point, you're going to want to flip it around. Having more flexibility is good. I know this is confusing, and I'm all over the place. But I think you guys are understanding the message I'm leading. Essentially, make sure that your frequencies are crossing with each other so that this is capable of picking up where this lets off. And the same thing as if you have a little woofer and a tweeter. Make sure that they overlap each other. In this case, they wouldn't overlap each other. This guy would fall off, at a couple thousand hertz, and this guy would want to pick up to at least 3,000 or 4,000 hertz. So there's a big chunk of frequencies you'd be missing there. So consider that when you're buying. That's the only thing you got to worry about with crossovers. And then when you're setting crossovers, if you have lots of overlap, so they can really move around, you could ask this guy to play 200 hertz, or you could ask this guy to play 200 hertz. You could move it, you see. When that comes around, you start getting into the nuances of crossover points. Whatever driver has the best positioning in your car, be it maybe a dashboard or A-pillar drivers or forward in the kick panels or wherever the best staging is, you want the drivers there to handle as much of the middle information as possible. So, for example, from like 200 hertz up to the top, you want as much of that information as you can get in the drivers that have the best positioning to give you sound image. And it may just be your doors, maybe all you have. But let's say you have door speakers and you have, you get yourself a couple of pods from customspeakerpods.com to do your A-pillars with, right? So you add a set of little guys like this up on there, or some little 4-inch whatevers, mids, and then tweeters, right? So you got those really nice little components right there. You tell those guys to play the bulk of that band, as much of that musical information as you can get right there, because that way you can cross over your sub to come up and meet it, and then things are beautiful. Or you can cross over your sub to meet a driver down in the door and then use it to play your drums and whatnot. And then, at 200 hertz, 300 hertz, 400 hertz, you bring in those guys on the dash and let them play all of those vocals, all those guitars, all those things that give you the spatial center stage feeling. So the more information you can play with the drivers that have the best positioning, the better. So keep that in mind when you're setting things up. And if you need a way to move things around and add more drivers and change it up without having to spend thousands of dollars, thousands and thousands redoing doors, CustomSpeakerPods.com. They have what you're looking for to build that foundation to do big SPL or sound quality. You can do a whole lot with a couple of speaker pods. And I'm going to be doing an upgrade to mine. You saw the new, you guys, all my people have seen what I did with the pods. But I'm getting ready to do a custom CustomSpeakerPods.com install. So I'm going to do more to them to make them blend in. And before, the videos you've seen how to do it just using the equipment the way it's intended. Now we're going to go another step forward and blend things in and make it even more awesome. So be sure to subscribe. Stay tuned for that. Hit the little ding dong bell if you want to keep track of me. And yet, I'm going to warn you, I upload 1 to 3 times a day. You're going to get a lot of notifications from me. So if you don't want to ring the bell, I totally understand. But if you, for some reason, love torturing yourself and you just love listening to me talk about car audio, ring that bell. You will get plenty, I'll assure you. Anyway, if nothing else, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and tell me in the comments down below where I messed up in this whole talk, and ask me any questions that I've already covered, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability, or I'll make another video answering them again. For now, guys, peace.